is the Medicare checklist. Today what we're going to do is we're going to go over the proper techniques that are going to be implemented that will allow you to ascertain what the true needs of the individual is. There's really no right or wrong way in which to use it, but there are some basic elements associated with it that is very important for you to understand. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through at least the first phase of what the Medicare checklist should look and feel like as we're giving presentations when we're in somebody's home. By now you should have a working knowledge of Medicare Part A and Part B. That's going to be essential. Now let's put things into context as well. Many of the leads that we run, individuals that we gain appointments with, we're going out there to give them an interview and to demonstrate to them what's going on with the Medicare program for this year. And so this is the document that is behind me that we're going to utilize that's going to help us to effectively deliver the information that many times they've requested. What's going on with Medicare Part A and what's going on with Medicare Part B. We're going to focus and limit our attention just specifically on what really is on the minds of individuals out there. When we talk with individuals that have Medicare Part A and Part B, many times they may not have used their health care all that much. But what they want to know is not necessarily what it covers and what it doesn't cover. They want to know what the cost of using the program is. And so this document is designed to address that issue and to identify where the major out-of-pocket consequences could occur when somebody utilizes their Medicare. Now initially we're going to take 23 steps. Now you may see different variations of this presentation, but if you don't have one, this is going to be a very good starting point for you. And when you become comfortable using the Medicare checklist, what you're going to learn is it's going to serve as the springboard to every product that is available to us in the product portfolio kit. Imagine, if we will, let's set the scene. We're sitting down at somebody's kitchen table and we're going to explain to them what's going on with their Medicare program. So we bring out the Medicare checklist is what we do. Now initially what we're going to focus our attention and energies on is just going to be on the first, we'll say, half of this particular document. As you can see, we have Medicare Part A, we have Medicare Part B. We're going to take a look to see what Medicare will pay for services rendered, and then we're going to show them what their out-of-pocket exposure is going to be in the next column. So therefore, it may be beneficial for you that when you're sitting down with someone and your miniaturized Medicare checklist, you may want to fold it right here and conceal the remaining 3 columns from their sight, at least at this point in your presentation. Now, step number 1, I would recommend that you do a little bragging about AmeriLife. That little elevator speech, who are we? Let them know that AmeriLife has been around for over 40 years. Let them know that the home office is in Clearwater, Florida. Also indicate to them where your office may be located locally. Invite them over. Give them a tour of the place. You'll be amazed as to how well received that may be. After doing that little elevator speech, if you will, now we're going to explain to them what's going on with Medicare Part A. As we go through this, it's important to follow these steps as closely as you possibly can. Remember, the object of utilizing the Medicare checklist is not an exercise as to how quickly you can complete the process, but to make sure that you use it as a part of a conversation and not so much as a presentation. After all, there is a difference. You want to get their level of engagement increased, because if they're asking questions, if they're following along, if they're hanging on every word that you have to say, they're going to be more receptive to the message that you're delivering, and hopefully they'll reveal to you the opportunities whereby you can assist them. So step number 2, Medicare Part A. If we're speaking with a Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we're going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, Medicare Part A is sometimes called the hospital portion of your Medicare. In the column, you're going to write it out. Be sure to print legibly. Remember, this is a document that when you are done giving your presentation, this is what you're going to leave with them. So when you leave it with them, make sure that they could read what you had wrote down. Also, too, when you're writing out particular information on the Medicare checklist, as you are writing, you have to resist the temptation to talk while you're writing. Say what it is that you're going to write down, and then write it. For example, I said hospital. It may have taken 3 to 5 seconds to write down the word hospital. It's important that you don't say anything. You want to give your audience enough opportunity to digest the information that has been shared with them. And many times what that will open the door to is conversation. Because now what you're getting them to do is put on their hospital thinking cap, and they're sitting there, hospital. Yes, I get it, because I was in the hospital last week, last month, last year, 2 years ago. They may explain to you where they have used their Medicare, which is going to help you to identify whether or not they're a candidate for a product that you may have in the product portfolio kit or not. So after you explain the Medicare Part A is going to address things pertinent to the hospital, now we're going to move to our first column here. As you can see, Medicare Part A is designed to address things pertinent to your inpatient hospital confinement. And if you're in that hospital, whether it's 1 day or 60 days, what they're responsible for paying out of their own pocket is going to be referred to as the Part A deductible. And that amount for this year is $1,260 per benefit period. Once again, if you noted, nothing was being said as I was writing down the $1,260 per benefit period. What you want your audience to do at this juncture, if they're truly engaged, what do you think they'll do? They'll ask you a question. We have to be careful, though, that when they do ask us the question, that we simplify the response as best we possibly can. Let's put things into context. Let's view it from their perspective. They probably don't know Medicare at all. They just used it. They don't know how it works, the ins and outs. They don't understand the terminology associated with the program either. So as we explained to them that they would have to pay a $1,260 per benefit period Part A deductible, many times what they're associating that with is, what would I have to pay during the course of the year? Because remember, they associate a deductible with it having to be satisfied on an annual basis. But we understand that this per benefit period, based upon how somebody uses their Medicare, they may have to pay that up to 6 times during the course of the calendar year. Therefore, with that knowledge base in mind, when we're writing that out and they ask us the question, what is a benefit period? Many times what they're hoping is that we're a mind reader. Because after all, they never heard that expression before. They don't know what it means, and from their perspective, they were expecting you to say annual deductible. You didn't. Now they're confused, and to them it sounds expensive. So what could it mean to them? Well, you and I both know it could mean that they could pay that up to 6 times, and therefore that would be the most effective answer that we can give to these individuals. So Mr. and Mrs. Jones, depending upon how you use your Medicare this year, you may have to pay that up to 6 times in a calendar year. You answered their question. Now, if they wanted to know how that was possible for them to pay that up to 6 times during the course of the calendar year, well, you can explain that in greater detail. But don't give them too much information, because if you give them too much information at the onset, when it comes time to making a decision as to what they need to do with their health care, if that's where the conversation is going to go, they're going to want to have some time to digest everything, and they may not want to do business with you today. Now, after they pay that $1,260 per benefit period, what is Medicare going to take care of? Well, we're going to write down the balance. It is important that you write out the word balance. Please do not use abbreviations. When you're sitting down and speaking with someone, and if you use abbreviations, they understand what that means. But remember, when we leave, assume they're going to take this document, they're going to look at it again, and that's going to be maybe an hour or 2 or days after you left. Will they be able to remember what that abbreviation stood for? Take your time, fill it out. Your audience will appreciate that. However, what is the average length of stay in a hospital? Well, we know it to be about 3 to 5 days is the average stay. So let them know that and write it down. Once again, as you are writing that piece of information down, you are given your audience the opportunity to share with you how they've used their healthcare in the past. When you say 3 to 5 days, they may say, well, you know what, that makes sense because last year and There you have it. You're getting some very important information from them, getting facts and figures, if you will, without coming across as being an interrogator. Now, after we address the first 60 days of confinement as an inpatient in the hospital, if an individual is in that hospital from day 61 through day 90, what they would be responsible for is going to be $315 per day. And after the individual pays that $315 per day, then Medicare is going to take care of the balance. Now, if somebody has some complications and they're in that hospital beyond 90 days, the daily co-payment goes from $315 per day up to $630 per day. Of course, that's from day 91 through day 150. After that $630 per day has been paid, Medicare will take care of the balance. Medicare gives these 60 days a special expression or term. They're called lifetime reserve days. Once again, as you are writing this information down, you are basically inviting your audience to ask questions. That helps you to determine their level of engagement. Now, when they ask you what is a lifetime reserve day, simplify it as best as you possibly can. That may be a little bit of a homework assignment as to how you can best accomplish that. We're basically all done talking about what the out-of-pocket costs are going to be as an inpatient in the hospital. The next step that oftentimes is taken with an inpatient hospital confinement is in regards to skilled nursing facility care. However, if you note, this next line, which is reserved for that, really doesn't identify it as skilled nursing facility care. It kind of dances around it, if you will. Extended care, it's got skilled care in parentheses, each spell of illness, post-hospital care. Basically, when we look at how Medicare works, an individual has to be in the hospital at least 3 days before they qualify for skilled care to be provided in a skilled care facility. Many times it's in concert with a condition for which they were released from the hospital for. Let's look at an example. Mrs. Jones, she broke her hip. She's in the hospital for about 3 to 5 days, hip replacement surgery, not ready to go home. She may need some post-hospital care or rehab services that could be rendered in that skilled nursing facility. So we're going to focus in on post-hospital care or rehab services. Now, if that were to happen to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, there's a little bit of good news and bad news, if you will. For the first 20 days, what you would pay without insurance is nothing. Little lesson here. We could have put 0. We could have put the number 0 in that column, and it would have been totally accurate. However, this is what we're trying to accomplish with our Medicare checklist, is we're trying to identify holes in the Medicare program, and as we're about to see in a little bit later episode, we're going to poke holes or attempt to do so in connection with any supplemental coverage they may have. And so where we would like to limit their focus, their attention, and energy is going to be on their financial impact. Now, as we look at these numbers, is that a number that they're concerned about? Well, they should be. That one? Absolutely. 630? Yes. But if I put 0 in there, what does it do to the overall impact? Kind of lessens it somewhat. So in order to make these numbers stand alone, it's best to write out the word nothing, and therefore they can just focus in on the financial impact specific to them. Because who pays for that first 20 days? Medicare. And they will take care of all cost. If their post-hospital care is to go beyond 20 days, from day 21 through day 100, there's going to be a daily co-payment, a co-insurance payment, and for this year it's $157.50. After the Medicare beneficiary pays that amount, then Medicare will take care of the balance. Should somebody's post-hospital care confinement endure beyond 100 days, that's where Medicare cuts things off. So from the 101st day on, what would you pay? All cost. And the reason is because Medicare pays nothing. Now the next point, as you can tell on your Medicare checklist, kind of stands alone. It's in reference to nursing home. Nursing home. You're going to learn that individuals, they hesitate to want to get involved in a conversation as it relates to a nursing home. But there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. You'll talk to a whole bunch of individuals that are on Medicare and they think that Medicare will pay for their nursing home confinement for as long as they need it. Well, they're wrong. And we try to tell them that. Of course, they come back to us and they cite evidence. They tell you that they know of somebody that's been in that nursing home for the last 3 years and they never had to pay a bill because Medicare has paid everything. Well, they're partially right. Somebody has paid the bill, but it's not Medicare. It's Medicaid, a different government program altogether. So we need to educate them in regards to what's going on with the Medicare program. What will Medicare do? What will Medicare not do? Therefore, when it comes to the custodial or intermediate levels of nursing home care, Medicare doesn't pay, which means the individual is responsible for all cost. Moving along to Medicare Part B, Medicare Part B is oftentimes referred to as medical portion of their health care. We're going to write that down in the column. Here is a small sampling as to what Medicare Part B is designed to address. If they want more details, they hopefully have a copy of their own Medicare and You publication, and we can direct them to the section that is going to identify what's covered and perhaps what's not covered for them under Medicare Part B. As you recall, Medicare Part B is an optional program, and there is a monthly premium associated with that. You can ask them, do they know how much they're paying for their Medicare Part B? And many times they're going to give you the answer. Sometimes it may not be what we expect, however. But for this year, 2015, the Part B premium is $104.90 per month. We can also let them know that for the majority of individuals that are on Medicare, this $104.90 per month that they pay is generally deducted from their Social Security checks. Now that's important for us to know. Reason? A little bit later on in our presentation, we may be able to use this as a pivot point to get a conversation going about final expense life insurance. And that will be demonstrated to you here shortly. They pay the $104.90 per month, the monthly premium, and as mentioned, the majority of individuals out there on Medicare, that's what they're paying. However, there might be a situation or two where people are paying more than $104.90, and it could only be due to income. They're making above and beyond a certain amount of money, and therefore Medicare is going to charge them a little bit more for Part B. And the second way in which they could pay more for their Part B premium is because they enrolled late into the program. And so those are the two reasons why people may pay more than $104.90. Before they gain access to these benefits, the individual is going to be responsible for satisfying an annual deductible. The annual deductible for this year is $147. After the Medicare beneficiary satisfies that $147 annual deductible, then what Medicare is going to cover is going to be 80% of the approved charges. It's important to note, it's not what the doctor or hospital charges, it's what Medicare is willing to approve. Remember, another term or expression used for Medicare is also known as fee-for-service program. So there's this fee schedule that exists out there, and based upon the fee schedule is where the approved charges come from. After Medicare takes care of 80% of the approved charges, then the Medicare beneficiary is going to be responsible for 20% of the approved charges. Now, this is where we get to demonstrate our knowledge associated with the Medicare program in helping our Medicare beneficiaries out there understand the different categories of which doctors and hospitals tend to fall in when it comes to utilizing the Medicare program. Doctors and hospitals, they'll fall into one of three categories. One, they don't participate at all with Medicare. So if somebody comes in and says Medicare is my insurance company, the doctor or hospital can turn them away. A doctor or hospital does not have to see people that are on the Medicare program. That leaves us with two doctors and hospitals that will fall into the other two categories. One category is one who agrees to the approved charge as payment in full. That is referred to as an assignment accepting provider. Now here's something as a recommendation. When you're talking with individuals out there, don't confuse them with the terminology, the jargon that is used with Medicare. They may not be able to readily understand or comprehend what it means to have an assignment accepting provider. It may be better suited for us to say, if your doctor agrees to the approved charges payment in full, well, that's one category of a doctor. You just basically define for them an assignment accepting provider. Now, if their doctors do not accept assignment, in other words, do not agree to the approved charges payment in full, by law, these doctors are allowed to tack on an excess charge. Now, by definition, you and I know what that excess limit is. It could be no more than 15% of the Medicare approved charge. But let's focus in on this column once again. What would you pay if you didn't have anything above and beyond original Medicare Part A and Part B? What would you pay if your doctor levied an excess charge? I don't care what that percentage may be. From the Medicare beneficiary standpoint, all they want to know is how much of that percentage are they responsible for. So the most effective way of reflecting that in that box is going to be, you're responsible for %100% of excess charges. You just explained to them how their Medicare works. So as we go back and take a look at our Medicare checklist, a lot of detail. There's a lot of detail in this document. We need to go through it simply, straightforward. Use it not as a presentation, but as a conversation with individuals. Now, if you note, there's several steps that we took, and I gave you the reasonings behind why we fill boxes out the way in which we do so. So if you notice, here's step number 1. Step number 2 is right there. Step number 3. Here's step number 4. Step number 5. Here's 6. There's 7. Here's 8. There's 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. Step 17. Step 18. Step 19. You're at step 20. 21, 22, and then finally, step number 23. That's phase number 1 that we take with the Medicare checklist. We need to approach it from this fashion because it's going to help to set the scene for what we're going to do next.